Welcome back to Underrated Movies. I'm your guy, I'm your man, Mr. Alton Henry. Today, we talk to you of a interesting topic. I'm gonna try to do more podcasts as much as I can to kind of. Using Podbean, but we'll see how that goes because you gotta pay to grow your thing. So, uh, yeah, I'm seeing if I could maybe do a little more of that. And yeah, my setting here is gonna be different. I'm gonna be living um at another location, so I'm just putting that out there. But for the time being, this is an interesting topic I kind of recently thought of. Recently had a conversation with my dad about movies, and he was telling me that, and this is a question that I think everybody, a lot of people who normally go to the movies would say there aren't really any too good movies out, especially right after COVID. And that's interesting because you hear a lot of people say that, and I'm curious to know why that is or why people think that. Is it because there's not enough time to really get these movies to develop in the way that they're not having enough time to fully process the um, story or the characters. Uh, Taking time, writing that down, taking time to flush out stories properly. Um, could it also probably be maybe a lot of the characters nowadays are not likable? Could it also be moral views in movies are not relatable? And another thought that kind of occurs to me, do movies strike hope? Um, and another thing I'm thinking of, it's hard to come up with an original idea. Let's actually, let me explore on that original idea. Original ideas, I think, well, I would say probably the most recent original idea that I've seen from a film would probably be the recent Best Picture running of One Battle After Another, directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, which is his first action film and an action comedy, but more of a dark comedy that's more along the lines of political satire in a way, especially with Sean Penn's character, Colonel Lockjaw, who is after, for those who haven't seen it, I highly encourage you to go check that film out because I think it is one of the best films to come out at least in the last 10 years since 2015. I think it delivered an iconic performance from Sean Penn. I think it delivered one of the most iconic action scenes in recent times, the finale chase scene. I think also the cinematography is wonderful, and I think Leonardo DiCaprio delivers a very memorable performance. But it also feels like the movie, from the way that the film is told, is more of a. Uh, I feel like the characters have a reason to do what they're doing while they're being there, especially how the story is told. I do think there's this way of how Paul Thomas Anderson is using the amount of screen times for these actors to do what they need to do, and I feel like there's a cause and effect to it as to why this character is doing this and then why it affects the next characters as the movie goes along. And I think the film does a really good job of reflecting cause and effect of how the cause and effect is impacting these characters and why they're doing what they're doing. And plus, it really feels like like an adventure film that I haven't really seen in quite a while, where one main protagonist is having to venture out to do something heroic. Now, unfortunately, the character, and I can kind of see there's some criticism with that film, is that these characters are also doing something bad and you're expected to root for them. So it's kind of, it's a bait and switch on that. So there's something I think about modern movies where you have protagonists starting off doing something that feels like they're doing a bad thing, or what their cause of doing is doing a bad thing, and then somehow we're supposed to root and like them for what they're doing, which, yeah, you could kind of feel that that's not really the best way to start a movie, of having your character do something bad to to root for him later on to the film. Well, I think in the sense you could relate to it if you, I guess, are into those um, moments, or I would say moments. If you have some sort of opinion against the political rules as of right now in the United States that you have a disagreement with, then I could see the relatability there. Um, where someone is trying to retaliate against the government for whatever reason based on political beliefs that was in effect back in the day, but now it's changing for the worse based on what they believe, and it gets very complicated. So I think there's a more. I don't think the movie focuses on the more dilemma of that, but I think it tries to. Well, the movie, it tries to inflict on a generational impact on what cause can have an effect years later on. And I think you see that with in this film. And plus, it's unique to have a character main protagonist who is pretty much a burnt out. Uh, no, I mean he's a demolition expert, but you don't really see him do a lot of that. But you see him pretty much out of shape, trying to rescue his daughter, and getting high and all that. And I think there's an aspect of that character that feels relatable. But also, and I watched the film with my dad. I've seen the movie like maybe 4 times, but last time I watched it, like, well, I watched it with my dad. There was one aspect about the character he didn't like, was him basically doing drugs right in front of his daughter, and I could, you know, like I mean, you get it. You want a character that is very believable, that feels like he could be your neighbor. But I could see that part. But I have a feeling that other fam- have done that. It does seem like a unique character trait that feels like it's relatable. Um, but I think it does a good job in the film of having characters you can kind of relate in the situations that they're in. Um, and it feels very gritty, realistic, um, based on how it was shot, the art direction with it. I mean, you have a lot of movies now that look too clean, and yeah, I mean, the quality of it might be great, but I think it does take away that realism. There was an interesting video. I forgot what the YouTuber, where back in the day, movies from the 70s and 80s, there was this sense of realism and grittiness um, to these movies and the look to it too. And that is that is a feeling that I do miss. Sometimes I think when movies look too clear and clean, I think it does feel too unrealistic. Now, depending what you're vibing with, that might I don't know. It kind of depends what you're vibing with. I like when movies that feel more gritty and realistic. Um, it feels more believable than I don't know. I'm thinking of the scene from the Transporter 2 where uh, Jason Statham had this. There was a bum under the car, and then he somehow got the car to flip over this crane, and then the crane hooked the bomb off the car, and then exploded. I mean, it's dumb fun. I don't mind movies being dumb fun. When it gets kind of cartoony like that, there has to be like a vibe, style to it. To me, it felt out of place, but like the tone changed a little bit from first transporter to the second transporter. So I wasn't really on board with the second one. That was just too silly. Uh, Also reminds me of The Marine with John Cena. Good, fun action flick. Okay, there's nothing wrong for action movies to take itself seriously. I mean, not taking itself seriously, just to be bonkers. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think those movies out there, I think they still do get made. I think there is an imbalance, and they lean more towards the comedy side of it, of those kind of movies of strong architecture, masculine frames, where it feels like every moment is like a joke. And it seems like movies are nowadays feel they're afraid to be too heavy or too serious. And I blame that on movies itself, because when that does happen, they tend to okay, you have an iconic movie that has that when you did it the first time it was iconic. But over time where other movies try to attempt that, I guess it would remind them of the previous film that did that. And so they would saturate it and try to parody it because it I don't know. Generations as they've gone on would try to get into that and then they would feel it's cheesy or it doesn't feel like it's you know and I could see the scene from First Blood Part Two where Rambo uh started destroying and was shooting all the communication devices um to intimidate one of the military personnel that almost left him to pretty much just say forget it basically left him to die and he was intimidating and then he had this famous speech he did in the second film, and it seemed kind of cheesy, but it felt it felt very emotional and relatable, especially you're trying to really be um, that kind of person embodying um, strength and trying to do the right thing and not lean towards a I'm gonna say corporate mindset. And when you mean by corporate mindset, I mean like no feeling into those decisions, just making cold decisions to make a profit or to achieve a goal. And Rambo achieved that goal not by following that path of what their military was going to, but he formed his own path, took matters into his own hands as a man, knowing what the risks would be, and took and solved it. If it had meant risking every form of his um livelihood and his beliefs for it. No, no, he stood by his beliefs, but beliefs that was represented by the system he was following. And that is something you don't normally see nowadays in movies, where you see, especially in characters like that, you don't see them have their moment of vulnerability, not when they're weeping, like when they're crying, but something that feels like it's okay to, it's a moment of a character who realized something very important through their journey, like a reflection. Like, when you're going through stuff, you learn your lesson. And it's like a moment that stands out and it's strong, it's faithful. It's, and another that I don't think a lot of movies took faith and some Christian views away from movies and they categorize in like a small time like Christian stuff. But you had that openly put into these movies as strength and that's stripped away from it. You know, Ramble's not really the original idea. It was based off a novel. And then so was One Bad After Another. That's based off a novel. The idea was based off the novel, but I think the film itself was trying to stretch out to an original form, but I haven't read the book, um, you don't have characters that a lot of audiences, especially if they're looking for someone trying to do the right thing, to look up to as a role model. I think that's why anime is so popular nowadays. And everyone's gonna quote back to Dragon Ball Z. You have these strong men, Goku, Vegeta, Tien, Piccolo, who retain their who they are. You see them struggle based on who they are. They didn't compromise who they are. Maybe a little bit for the people that they love. You see that. And you see that strength that people wish they had. And they want to be that. You even see this in some of the women characters in Dragon Ball Z, even though they get sidelined a bit. I mean, you saw it in Chi Chi, you saw it in Bulma, you saw it in Android 18. Um, Even in Android, it was not a woman, but Android 16, I thought had a very memorable presence you know, of good and evil. And despite the hardship that comes, and I miss the Tanami promos because they really did a great job of conveying messages that you may not know as a child, but when you get older, it will resonate. They're not conveying messages about the journey of what it takes to really go through life and to prevail at it and to struggle in it and to still retain the person you are and to still have that level of faith in the Christian form. Um, and I'm saying in that point with Christian form, majority of Americans believe in Christianity and or Catholic. So there's a natural order of what what is to be believed. These characters believed it. You know what was good, you know what was bad, you know what was on the good side, you know what was evil. You didn't try to sugarcoat, try to sympathize with an evil character. Despite what goes on, if an evil character does something bad, they're bad. They're harming someone for doing bad things. You know, so you see that, and I think that's what's been missing a lot, and especially when action movies. I mean, like one of my favorite action films of the last 10 years was David Fincher's The Killer. Unfortunately, he's a character that you kind of similar to the masculine frame, but his character is fascinating. He's a character that talks the talk, but he messes up, and that's interesting to kind of see that in an action flick where you it's like a deconstruction, and that character is a different discussion, but that character is completely something you don't look up to. He's a cold-hearted killer. Normally in films like that character, you see him as the villain, but it's a more as a analyzation of what this kind of character does in a daily life, of of what it's like to be hit and hitman mess up of what they're doing professionally, and you see that in that film. where he's talking about don't be emotional, don't get attached to stuff, but you see him literally doing the opposite of what he set out to do in film, and that's fascinating. Um, and yeah, do movies strike hope? Well, I touched on that a bit. Not a lot, no, and it depends on the message, especially depending what you believe in, depending what political or religious. Not a lot of movies strike hope unless it's like a philosophical art house film. But no, lately, probably superhero movies lately, but a lot of those movies come out manufactured and cheesy. And I would say no, as of lately, there not a lot of movies have been coming out has struck a lot of hope. Uh, and I think it had to do with stripping away a good, basic good versus evil story. You don't normally see that nowadays. You normally see movies mostly about victim and trauma. Um, something if it's those kind of movies, especially like really good and evil, they're like shot to the low budget to not even mainstream anymore. It's hard to kind of navigate, just kind of see where those films out. It's either someone's in a situation where they're trying to get out of, but that morality of good and evil is really kind of like blurred. It's like that's completely absent. It's like you're seeing these characters in a very dire situation and you're really on for the ride. And normally you kind of feel the villain wins, or you're trying to get the character to feel the bad guy sympathetic, like Joker. I see a lot of people not liking it. I liked it for what it was back then, but as over time, me liking it has lessened a bit. And I'll be honest, my brother and I did like a big debate about that film, and it's fine for what it was, but for the character like the Joker, yeah, you can't necessarily be sympathetic towards a psychopathic killer. There's this movie that recently came out. It's out now. It's the Strangers Chapter 3. And I don't plan on seeing the film, but from what I saw in the trailer, you're following one of the characters who is joining in on the killing spree of the serial killer. And yeah, feels like you kind of have to root for that main character who is battling the morality of what it may take to, I don't know, do the right thing, but being a killer. So, I think it's this new thing of, oh, we should feel sympathy for the villains. No, you don't. Despite what they did, maybe it was a mistake. And depending on that, I remember my brother was telling me about how the court would handle evidence sometimes on the scene, though, if they get the evidence right, if it's not tampered, um, there's a plea deal where you could make deals to see if you gonna go to jail or not. So it's like they make it into a business, which is an interesting look to that. And I think that's kind of what Law Abiding Citizen touched. And I think that film does a good job of analyzing good and evil and, you know, but it's more like when good and evil is set up as a business where someone feels cheated out of their justice. So they take justice in their own hands. And it's like, how do you bear the lines of trying to do justice that's set up as a system, thinking that it's right, but there's some crookedness to it, and they set up as a business compared to someone literally just taking laws into their own hands and just say, "No, you done this, you murdered my family, you hurt people up, you're done." They try to do it fairly, but they still got some corruption involved in that. and you have someone who's pretty much just saying, "No, you're done." So, which is interesting to really think about it. Um, I don't think movies nowadays really have that morality, especially when it comes between good and evil. I think they kind of sympathize evil, um, which is not good. Um, which I had the whole criticism going on with Sound of Freedom, but then they would normalize having a movie about the devil with long legs, and I expressed my frustration with that in previous videos. Like I should have saw that Sound of Hope film because Long Legs came out while Sound of Hope was out, and I'm like, because I walked out of there thinking, no, this ain't right. It's not right at all. So I don't think a lot of movies strike a lot of hope nowadays. Like those movies, those feel good movies, they're like pushed to the side to early release to, because they don't make a lot of money. Um, so you're seeing less of those movies because they don't make a lot of money. Which brings me to the fact that, with technology advancing the way it is and people literally making stuff that they want to see that audience can relate to, which is why I think it's another reason there's been a diminishing effect of of box office returns for the theater is because they're not relating to what they're putting out. So, but they're relating to somebody posting something on YouTube or TikTok or whatever. Yeah. And like I said, I touched on the morality sense. Like I think the morality sense of good and evil in movies have just blurred. Like even Marvel, you don't even get a good and evil story from Marvel anymore. I think Thunderbolts was the I like the Thunderbolts, and you had these characters that were basically they're bad guys, but they had a redeeming arc of doing good things. And that was good. That was good. You had these characters trying to make amends of it. Um, I think it's one of the rare cases that I think that succeeds. I'm not really sure with Loki. Loki was fine, but then you have this character who's such likable by audiences. They had to make him likable. I think that's the danger, where you make the bad guy a good guy, and then he switches to a bad guy, and then you have him balance up between there's like no. You pretty much tuned out on like the state of how dire the situation is um with the film. So I think audiences will get bored of it because there's no stakes because you pretty much minimize the villainous, the impact of the villain. So I mean, you're not supposed to like the villain. You're supposed to hate the villain and find something likable about the main character. And plus, the main antagonist, protagonist. Sometimes they'll do some shady stuff that makes him not likable. But you know, you have a redeeming arc of it. I think the only film that I think is valid for that was probably Everything Everywhere All at Once, where it was a family drama, martial arts, sci-fi comedy. Uh, and I think the point of what that film was going for, I think it's a rare exception of having a villain, but really understanding where those roots came from. So I think there are exceptions to making a movie where you're having a sympathetic villain, but I don't think it's good to have it all the time in every single film. There's nothing wrong having a simple good and evil story. Um, like you sometimes you just want to have a villain that's just dirty dog shit crazy, and you just want the hero to beat a like I remember what movie was it? I was the Fist of Legend, man. Fist of Legend. That Japanese general. And Jet Li pretty much just beating the mess out of him. I forgot how sinister that character was. And then man, they had some pretty bad. Oh yeah, Meltdown. It's called Meltdown in Japan in here, but I think it's called something else in China. It's another Jet Li film, but it's like a parody action comedy where you have these villains who pretty much like really early in the film that pretty much just kidnaps a group of kids and they just put them hostage with bombs strapped to them and they just Jet Li was trying to rescue him and it doesn't happen. That gives you a good hook to root for the hero to get justice. Plus he loses his wife in the film. You know, you don't get movies like that that were just straight good and evil. Not every film needs so I think they strip that away so bad, man. Um, and I think that's also consequential look when let's say you're trying to teach people what it means to really be good and the risk of what it takes to be a good person. If you strip the meaning of good, especially based on what is predicted in the Bible, um, instead of really accepting what is really true, people gonna formulate what their own opinion what good is, which ain't the case. Which ain't the case at all. And there's a lot of stuff that's normalizing with sex. Um, it's like everywhere, like that show Euphoria. Uh, it's on what season three? I don't plan on watching that. There's a lot of movies coming out there just about sex and sex and sex and sex and sex. No, I don't plan to watch it. They even had that crap on TikTok. Okay, like also before I left my job, I was servicing the store, and then um, there's a picture of Sydney Sweeney just with her chest just poking out. She was holding it right in your face. There's no decency anymore, man. Like seriously, there's no decency anymore. It's like where's the like seriously? You don't the human decency of what's taught in the Bible is gone, man. I know they have to do with the movies that are being made out today, but there was a natural sense of rules that were made that was put into these movies, and we believed it. Changing those rules in these movies, audiences can't relate to it anymore. And normalizing it, we can't relate to it anymore because that's not the original intent of what we're supposed to believe is acceptable. It is not, you know, especially what's been going on around in the world and is being normalized. If it's being normalized in the movies, they're going to normalize it in real life. You know, and I think there are really good movies out there. We just don't get the attention it deserves. And I think everyone has their opinion what's a good movie. Somebody could say, yeah, I might put that on a bridge too far. I haven't seen that, but you know, um, I do think there is a generational impact. What's separating, um, well, just what's relatable, but I think there was a natural order of what was originally meant to be, showcasing what men and women were supposed to be like throughout forms of cinema, and stripping that away and making it feel relatable to the current time, which is understandable. But I think there was a certain standard and belief back then that lingered all the way until like the mid 2000s have been stripped away because that idea was there for so long and now you're stripping it away. I don't think audience relate to it, you know. and then you're normalizing certain movies out that people just aren't on board to see. You know, and then there's movies out which I think you know you're being advertised like that movie that just came out. There's two movies that are out in theaters. We'll see if I'll have time to see it. You got that Crime 101, and then you have this movie with Sam Rockwell called Good Luck Don't Die or something. Good Luck Farewell and Don't Die. Some sort of sci-fi comedy. There was barely any advertisements. I don't know if that movie's gonna make any money because there's barely any advertisement. I don't even Crime 101's not gonna make some money back. You know, like these movies that seem I don't know like mere close to mid budget. Are they even fine? Are they gonna bother to put advertisements out like, for people to see it? Or are we just producing too many movies and the studios are trying to push for the bigger movies, the IPs, and all the other movies that seem original or not attached to IP, they just push them to the side because they're pushing out for the manufactured movies. The movies that feel a little bit more risky, they're just putting it to the side. And that doesn't feel good, especially if you put almost $100 million in that movie, you don't bother getting it as much exposure, which tells me advertising is getting more expensive. You know, so I think the core of it is you're not having a good and evil story. And I'm even put that. I'll even shift that even into kids' movies. Um, there's nothing wrong having kids' movies be comedies, silly. But I think some of them are afraid to be dramas because growing up with some of the kids' movies that I like watching, especially with the Disney movies back in the day, they were dramas, man. They had hints of comedy, but they had dramas about father, like parents really sticking together. And I'm not saying it's not in those themes today, but I'm saying those movies weren't afraid to be dramas. They weren't afraid to touch on subject matters that may be a little bit more heavy. Um, and I did look up when kids movies did do that. They tend to not do well because they fear that maybe it was a little bit too soon for kids to go into that. So now you have more of the silly, whimsical movies that are coming out now with what Hollywood's producing now. Like was it 3 months ago? Like November, I think it was November or October, November. Like I rewatched The Land Before Time, the first one, for the first time since I was a boy. I'm 33 right now, but the first time, man, like the first, I know there's a show, a little TV show. I know they made like 7 different spin-offs, uh, but they just they never were better than the original. Uh, and it's a heavy movie, man. I think my niece tried to watch it. I think she almost cried when the mom died. From what my brother told me. Um, you know, like even Casper, American Tail. These movies were dramas, man. The last kids movie that was a drama that I felt that was, I think it's his best movie is Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio. His adaptation of Pinocchio. And then there's Soul, Disney's Soul. So I think there's a missing of not having these movies be heavy a little bit, which is a shame because I think it takes away the relatability where it's cool to be fun and that can't happen all the time, mate. That's just not what life is, or it hasn't. There's a lot of setbacks. I don't know. I think that's why anime is so popular because they show that in the characters and the journey of trying to do life despite having fantasy elements. You know, I think they sugarcoat it in the movies and here in America, but in anime, man. And it's been a minute since I've seen like a good anime. I know Demon Slayer, popular. I've seen a few things about it. It's pretty cool. Pretty cool. Um, you know, and I think I think Hollywood is afraid to allow characters to relate to real life, and it's just like whoa, what's going on there? And then also this relating to real life that everybody relates to. Everybody relates to. Not everyone can relate to the LGBTQ thing. Not everyone can relate to discrimination. Maybe more common now, but like nobody relates to LGBTQ, but they can relate to being discriminated either from a group, from a location, some sort of form of discrimination, or they feel outcast of trying to be something, being part of a group, but a group of people preventing them to feel like they fit in. That's a relatable thing, you know, or parents being separated and, kids are trying to comprehend why their parents are separated and trying to find a way for them to be together. Well, that's something. That's a relatable thing I think a lot of people have gone through, you know, especially, you have a good story behind it, you know. And then, I guess with CGI, well, with AI coming in, trying to make everything look believable now. Um, I mean, we'll see how that plays out. But we there's this. We'll see how AI plays out. 'Cause, thinking of it, I think the use of it will be, to reduce costs, which mostly in the visual effects part. My theory is, or at least the way I'm having trouble with concepting, trying to get the concept is how they can control the image and manipulate it the way that they want it. Um, because I've tried Higgsfield. I'm just not really big on just having a prompt like a 1980s computer. It just does the work for you. I don't know. I kind of would like the idea of manipulating the image the way that I want it, the way my mind can envision the way that I want it. If that makes sense. So I could see it trying to, reduce labor costs. I think that's the best thing I could think of with AI. They're just going to help reduce labor costs because you can't afford to have 300 people working on it. They're going to probably break it down to 100 with AI. I mean, there's been some pretty impressive visuals with AI. Um, you know, especially with that viral video with Brad Pitt versus Tom Cruise. I mean, it was impressive. A little blurriness, but I do think there's going to be there is going to be a contraction of actors. Um, but also, I think with creativity, technology being so open, I think it will put in the door for people to create their own mini studio, you know, and create the things they want to see, especially if the bigger studios aren't doing that. Which, I'm surprised they're not doing a survey. They ain't gonna do a survey. They ain't gonna select people to do surveys and say, hey, can you do this? Can you do that? Or actually, no. Would you like to see this, or would you like to see that? I mean, a lot of even the Disney movies that coming out haven't been good. I mean, I haven't seen Zootopia 2. I would like to see it because I really loved the first one. The first one was just outstanding. Um, so yeah, it. Because in that it has some themes in there that were relatable. So it's all about finding a good idea that's relatable to people and what they can fully grasp and flesh out. Plus, it's a story good, you know. Well, I think the story could be anything, but it's just can you write it well that's gonna last for the duration of what you got going on. Um, and you know, does the story have enough stakes for it? I think there's a lot to be said where I think it just goes down to cultural relevance in these movies and like are they related to the audience where it's a simple good and bad morality type story. And if it's not, then like again, I still stand by it. Some biblical beliefs into it. Is there going to be hope in that story? Horror films out. I mean, they can be bleak as heck, but um, my beef right now with horror is that they're making too many horror movies about the devil, and that's making me uncomfortable. And I don't, you know, especially what's happening now with the Epstein stuff, and with that coming out, a lot of people ain't gonna support Hollywood because now they know a lot of people bad, like a lot, especially with the bigger money, which, you know, um, remember there was a saying in the Bible, and I'm still reading it, but I remember remember it did say, especially those who have a lot of money tend to turn corrupt, you know, and that's been a lesson learned throughout time. Rarely do you see somebody with a lot of money that's doing a good thing, and especially to start wearing masks about animals and stuff. Oh my God! Now, with that, the question is, are you planning on taking the risk of doing the right thing? You don't get that feeling a lot of movies nowadays. But I think that's my take on it. I don't why I think movies aren't good anymore. Um, for me, I like there's a lot of movies that were good. You just gotta seek them out. Like especially with things, like if you go watch movies from over country, especially with China, man. China has a certain system of how they want their movies. They ain't trying to deviate none of it. Even if they come out with the same movie, it's normally a cop chasing a bad guy doing some shady stuff, and that's fine. They have a system that works. It works with Forum, good, and they got a shitload of them on Tubi. So if you're willing to to watch Cantonese subtitles, if you want a basic good and evil story, cops and robbers, bang boo. Watch a lot of the movies from China. Watch a lot of movies from China. Stay away from the horror films from Japan though. If you really like, especially if you're trying to, if you don't want anything depraved, because you're gonna get that in China. But Koreans, yeah, like a good evil action flick story. Asian cinema's been still doing great at it. Okay, they ain't trying to bury the lines of, oh no, we gotta make the main villain sympathetic. The only character main villain I'm really sympathetic toward is Vader and Mr. Glass, even though both of those characters pretty much took out hundreds of people, you know. So that's just my thing. Even though, like I said, you can't feel sympathy for someone who goes completely evil, but unless their redemption arc is really good. Darth Vader had a good redemption arc. Vegeta from Dragon Ball Z had literally one of the best arcs ever in anything. He's probably the best anti villain hero in almost any form of media. So he's probably the ideal character. Like DBZ probably have like the ideal characters for strong heroic characters, even Yu Yu Hakusho. So I'm just putting it out there. That's my take on it. Why I think maybe movies nowadays haven't been good is that lack of morality to support characters that have a, and plus make them relatable. Okay, not everyone could be relatable to be a millionaire and all that, Um, you know, like John McClane, he was just a railroad cop, kind of separated from his wife. That's relatable to a lot of people. Not a lot of people who is a freaking millionaire and he's trying to assassinate other millionaires so he can get more money. That's not relatable to a lot of people. Okay. What's relatable is people who struggle in addiction and trying to overcome it. Mm. Or, behind bills and, they're desperate for money. Bills keep piling up, so they're gonna do what they can to, do the wrong thing, but they may have a redemption arc later into the film where they're gonna return all the money, you know. So that's my take on it. All right. So let me know what you guys think, and let me know, yeah, what's your favorite underrated movie, y'all?